China's state media is waging a propaganda war, its latest campaign targeting U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, calling him an enemy of mankind. An interview with a citizen inside China reveals the extent of China's propaganda arm. An American commission calling for more sanctions on officials from countries who violate religious freedom. The Trump administration introducing new rules to prevent the Chinese regime from getting a hold of advanced U.S. technology for military use. And countries are rethinking their relationships with China during the pandemic. And today we look at one of the most important countries in Africa. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. For the Chinese Communist Party, the war against the epidemic is also a propaganda war. This includes improving its own image and damaging the reputation of its enemies. On April 27th, the Chinese regime's mouthpiece, CCTV, commented on U.S. Foreign Secretary Mike Pompeo, accusing him of spreading a political virus and turning himself into an enemy of mankind.
本台今天播发国际锐评，散播政治病毒的蓬佩奥 正把自己变成人类公敌。瑞平说，疫情爆发以来，蓬佩奥作为美国首席外交官，在疫情防控上毫无作为，如同隐形人。相反，他在给中国泼脏水方面跳得最凶。瑞平指出，蓬佩奥在危机面前没有表现一丁点儿职业操守与责任担当，反而不断散播政治病毒，挑拨离间，搬弄是非。 不断践踏人类道德底线，不断干扰国际公共卫生合作，自甘沦为全人类团结抗疫的绊脚石，沦为病毒扩散的帮凶。谎言和诽谤无法弥补失去的时间，无法挽救濒临死亡的生命，更无法让美国再次伟大。
A netizen tweeted, "It pushes the 1.39 billion Chinese people to the ground and forces them to accept its representation. Now it's furious and wants to represent the American people. This shamelessness is incomparable." Another netizen wrote, Pompeo responds, "Being publicly insulted by the Communist Party is the highest praise of my character." The Chinese language tweets mostly criticize the cover-up of the epidemic by the CCP. Twitter is blocked in China. Chinese Twitter users are either living outside China or are in China but use a VPN to access outside information. How about people in China without free access to information? Our reporter talked to one of them. The local authorities say there are only cases from Russia and everything is under control. Mr. Yang says all information about local cases are pure online rumors.
Nonsense, nonsense. Many things on the internet are not facts at all. How can they know so many things? It's all hearsay. We live here and are paying attention to this matter every day. How could us locals not know?
He thinks he knows more than people living abroad.
I know somebody in the public security system and somebody in customs. The amount of information we get, we don't get any less information than you.
He trusts the authorities, and because he has his own business and his family has enough to eat, he's happy with his life.
The government publishes the latest information every day. It's announced every day in the community and in the residential area.
He had pity for our reporter because she isn't in China right now.
Are you safe abroad? To be honest, China has become the safest place in the world.
He also talked about the whistleblower Dr. Li Wenliang from Wuhan, who put the information about a new coronavirus online. It was seen as a rumor and deleted by internet police in China. Dr. Li was silenced by the authorities. Later, he died from the disease. Mr. Yang said this is a national affair and has nothing to do with regular people like him.
As a whistleblower, his merits and demerits, be it at the national level, be it at the local level, everyone makes a judgment in their hearts. It has nothing to do with us as regular people. The most important thing is to ensure that we don't get infected.
The media Mr. Yang reads are all on state-run media shared on WeChat, which is controlled by the Communist Party as well. He asked our reporter if what he read on WeChat is true, that a European journalist wanted to protest against the lockdown measure because it restricted his freedom but got infected.
You are abroad. Everyone wants to have freedom. I read the online report. I don't know if it's true or false. It said a reporter licked the sputum of an infected person. He then got infected himself. Is it true?
He believes Chinese people living abroad are having a hard time because of xenophobia.
Foreigners are xenophobic. Many Chinese students abroad are abused and beaten when they go out, so they dare not go out.
Our reporter told him this is just propaganda. He responded he didn't want or need to know too much. A video from Taiyuan City shows hundreds of people in front of an outpatient apartment at one of the city's biggest hospitals. It's not yet known why they were gathering there. Internal documents obtained by NTD reveal Beijing is now regulating funeral homes, with many setting up workstations inside hospitals. According to the documents, funeral homes in Beijing will set up mortuary stations in hospitals and provide 24/7 service. 21 state-owned hospitals will work with 5 funeral homes. Many now wonder if the new guidelines point to the regime expecting another outbreak. Documents seen by NTD show a district in Beijing is converting hotels into quarantine centers. Local residents tell us almost all 3-star or higher hotels are being used as quarantine centers. A French politician is calling for an international health tribunal to hold countries accountable for disasters. Guillaume Peltier first proposed the idea in 2018. Now, amid the pandemic, he's updating it. He appealed to the National Assembly yesterday in hopes of establishing an international health tribunal to hold China and the WHO accountable for the pandemic. He said people have a right to know why the Chinese regime and the WHO lied. This comes amid growing global calls for an independent investigation into how China handled the virus outbreak. The EU's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, denies the EU caved to pressure from Beijing over a virus disinformation report. He came under fire after multiple reports showed changes to the document. The report highlighted disinformation campaigns amid the pandemic, but multiple reports showed changes made to the final report, including a watered-down criticism of China. China's foreign ministry has aggressively denied any wrongdoing, claiming it's the victim. Israel's health ministry has banned the use of virus test kits from China. It comes after labs noticed some were contaminated. Washington state also reported contaminated test kits from China. Both Spain and the Czech Republic also reported defective test kits from China, with the results being false 70 to 80% of the time. The UK has also found issues with Chinese antibodies tests, saying it gave inaccurate results. Concerns are growing over the virus situation in Africa. Public health experts worry Africa's fragile healthcare systems could be quickly overwhelmed if the virus spread isn't contained. A UN report predicts 300,000 to 3.3 million deaths for the continent. So far, countries hit hardest by the CCP virus appear to share a common thread: close ties with the Chinese regime. Africa also shares complicated ties with China. Take Nigeria, for example. Nigeria is Africa's most populous country and has the biggest economy. It's also one of China's most important trading partners and major investment destinations on the continent. Ogun, one of Nigeria's states, formed a free trade zone with China's southern Guangdong province. The area also has a relatively large population of Nigerians living there. A large part of the ties between the two countries has to do with oil. Nigeria is Africa's leading oil producer. It pumps a kind of high-quality oil known as sweet crude, known for its slightly sweet taste thanks to a low sulfur content. The oil is highly sought after. Nigeria is highly reliant on its oil industry. It brings in over 70% of the country's federal revenue. Nigeria's massive oil reserve attracted attention from China. Western oil companies used to dominate the oil industry there, but when China entered the scene, it brought development offers with it. In 2005, PetroChina signed an $800 million deal that imports 30,000 barrels from Nigeria to China on a daily basis for 5 years. The next year, then Chinese leader Hu Jintao visited the country. During his visit, China secured 4 oil drilling licenses. In return, Nigeria's infrastructure would receive $4 billion in Chinese investment. Later, Chinese oil firms were also given preference for oil exploration in Nigeria's Niger Delta region, Africa's most important oil-producing region. And Nigeria's oil reserves are still attracting Chinese interest. In 2019, Chinese investment in Nigeria's oil and gas industry hit $16 billion. Aside from oil, China also financed and built multiple infrastructure projects in Nigeria. But the funding didn't benefit locals, since Chinese companies prefer using their own workers instead of hiring locally. They're not interested in buying locally either. Chinese construction companies ship large quantities of industrial materials from China. Not only that, they also sell the materials to local markets at competitive, low prices. But the competition doesn't end there. In return for oil exports to China, Nigeria imports textiles and other consumer goods from China. The country is now China's second largest export market in Africa. But the flourishing Chinese goods spelled disaster for its domestic economy. Nigerian workers dye their fabric using indigo plants mixed with cooking ashes. Chinese companies can produce almost identical patterns using synthetic dyes and at a much cheaper price point. It's hard for their Nigerian counterparts to compete. Nigeria's textile and apparel industry used to be the second largest in Africa, but within 20 years, employment in the sector plummeted from 600,000 to 20,000. The influx of Chinese goods largely contributed to the sharp decline. Likewise, the New York Times reported a similar drop in Kano, Nigeria's dye pits. That's where cloth is dunked into 6-foot pits of dye to achieve the city's signature blue color. There, employment dropped from nearly 1,500 to 250 in 10 years. In response, textile mills closed down, workers lost their jobs, and residents protested in the streets. They hope to revive the textile sector, now crumbling under the influx of Chinese goods. To handle the chaos, Nigeria's government once again sought help from its largest creditor, China. Last year, the Nigerian government received $2 billion of Chinese investment into its textile industry. China and several other countries continue to violate people's religious freedoms. So an American commission is asking the administration to sanction more officials. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on their annual report and an additional country that made it into the top tier.
A new report from the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom says India has allowed nationwide campaigns of harassment and violence against religious minorities like Muslims. Chair Tony Perkins went over why they want the State Department to designate India as a CPC or country of particular concern in an interview with American thought leaders.
They're trending in a very problematic and troubling way. We're seeing, we're seeing this systematic, ongoing and egregious violation of religious freedom, both by the state and by non-state entities, that they're allowing it to happen.
But there are others, 14 in total. They also want China redesignated as a CPC. One member of the commission said there is no question that China is the world's foremost violator of human rights and religious freedom, and that it cannot be compared to any other country. Chair Perkins mentioned reports of forced organ harvesting.
We see Falun Gong, which is another religious minority that is suppressed in China, in fact linked to forced organ harvesting. What I have seen very reliable, that's become big business in China.
The U.S. can pressure countries with CPC status with sanctions to get them to change if nothing else can be done through public policies. One of their key recommendations to the administration was to impose more sanctions on officials who participate in religious persecution. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
There were also some improvements, like in Sudan, where a transitional government has allowed for the freedom of belief and worship. The Trump administration has introduced new rules to prevent China from getting hold of advanced U.S. technology for military purposes.
The Trump administration has moved to restrict exports of technology to countries that pose a threat to national security, including China. The move plugs a loophole which allows advanced technology, like semiconductors and sensors, to be exported for civilian use, but actually end up in the hands of a foreign military. Casey Fleming is CEO of Black Ops Partners, a leading U.S. intelligence and security company.
We don't want them using our technology and our research and development against us. They can use the technology internally to power their military, but then also to create countermeasures to render ours neutral or useless.
The definition of military end user has been expanded to include anyone who supports the operation of the military. This includes Chinese companies whose core business is not related to the military, but has military customers. In these cases, American exporters will need approval to send national security-controlled items to these companies. It's seen as a counter to China's civil-military fusion strategy, which forces private Chinese companies to hand over technology to the military when asked.
They strip away technologies and say, hey, look, listen, 80% of this can be used in building the Chinese economy and what we know it as the private sector, but then another 70% or another 60% of that 100% can also be used in developing military.
Other countries selling American products will also need approval from the U.S. before sending them to China.
President Trump said on Monday the U.S. may seek hundreds of billions in damages from Beijing. The U.S. is currently investigating China's handling of the virus.
And we are not happy with China. We are not happy with that whole situation because we believe it could have been stopped at the source, it could have been stopped quickly, and it wouldn't have spread all over the world.
He said there are a lot of ways to hold Beijing accountable, and if damages were sought, the amount would be substantial. A reporter brought up the issue of compensation by mentioning a German newspaper editorial. The editorial billed China for about $163 billion in losses to Germany caused by the pandemic.
I mean, this is worldwide damage. This is damage to the U.S., but this is damage to the world.
Also on Monday, the president unveiled new plans to speed up and expand testing for the CCP virus nationwide. He said the White House Coronavirus Task Force is confident they have enough testing capacity to begin reopening the country. The White House published 2 documents on Monday, which lay out plans to increase testing. The documents give guidance to states on how best to increase testing capacity, establish systems to detect local outbreaks, and conduct contact tracing. President Trump said testing would become one of the country's great assets. The announcement comes as the administration faces pressure to increase testing capacity, seen as key to lifting lockdowns sooner. The U.S. has conducted 5.4 million tests so far.
Nearly double the number tested in any other country, more than twice as much as any other country. Think of that.
White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator Dr. Deborah Birx said the testing strategy laid out has 3 parts: testing those who are unwell, testing vulnerable communities, and a rapid response program that includes contact tracing.
Montana is the first state to lift restrictions on schools. As kids there get ready to reunite, a few states over, Chicago is taking a different road, tightening up despite a court order to relax.
Montana students may finally get to see each other in their classrooms next week, as the state plans to reopen schools on May 7th, along with restaurants. In a majority of states, classrooms are closed for the rest of the school year, making Montana an exception. And more beaches are opening. Over the weekend, Californians took advantage of it, but the governor says the crowds are concerning.
The images down in Orange County and Ventura County on our beaches. Those images are an example of what not to see, people what not to do.
Miami may soon see similar scenes, as the beaches and parks are opening tomorrow. While local mayors are relaxing restrictions, others are tightening. Chicago's mayor said she will enforce the governor's stay-at-home order extended through the end of May. That's despite an Illinois judge granting a restraining order that overrules the governor's state restrictions. Illinois is one of the nation's hotspots with nearly 50,000 CCP virus cases. New York, the hardest hit state, yesterday saw its lowest drop in daily hospital admissions in a month, but still hundreds of New Yorkers are passing away from the CCP virus daily. As for reopening the state, the governor announcing today the criteria each area must meet for that to happen.
Watch the healthcare capacity. Your healthcare system cannot go over 70% capacity.
He said testing capacity is another important factor. Businesses will also be required to follow social distancing. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
New Yorkers make up 300,000 of the nation's 1 million confirmed virus cases. Florida's governor says he'll soon announce his plans to reopen the state. That's according to comments from his meeting in the White House today with President Trump.
Most draconian orders that have been...
In a meeting with President Trump, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis teased his plan to reopen the Sunshine State. He says he'll make an announcement on Wednesday.
You name it, Florida's done better. And I'm not criticizing...
DeSantis explained Florida's ability to test people for the virus now exceeds current demand. He says moving to a Phase 1 reopening won't be a very big leap. He also defended his state's response, which had come under criticism in recent weeks for locking down later than other states.
Everyone in the media was saying Florida was going to be like New York or Italy, and that has not happened because
touching on the country's first walk-up test site, which opened Tuesday in Miami.
So I think this walk-up site is going to give us some confidence that we're going into places that may have been overlooked and giving people easy access.
Florida health authorities have attributed much of the state's virus infection to people traveling from other hotspots like Europe, Nile River cruises, the New York City area, and Latin America. DeSantis told Trump he's concerned about virus spread in some Latin American countries, including Brazil. The governor called on airlines to test more passengers before they board. Likewise, the president said he's talking to the airline industry about temperature checks and tests for passengers before their flights.
The United States' gradual reopening has investors hopeful. A financial expert says it's a great time to invest because stocks are cheap. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more.
5 more states are making moves to reopen their economies, bringing hope to investors. And after President Trump announced 20 states plan to get back to business last week, the Dow Jones and S&P 500 have been steadily climbing back, and all indexes are within 20% of their record highs in February. Chris Burns, CEO of a financial planning firm, says it's a great time to buy stocks if you can.
Because now is one of the best times ever for people to be investing in the market because everything's on sale. Do not go after the favorite sector that your mother's brother's cousin told you was a good idea. Invest in the whole market, be widely diversified, and then as the market comes back from the drop we've seen, you'll come back strongly.
If you have a 401k and are struggling, the CARES Act allows people under 59 years old to take out money without the 10% penalty, and you can pay taxes on it over 3 years instead of all at once. Second only to the Great Depression, jobless claims are staggering, with more than 26 million Americans applying for unemployment benefits since mid-March. Burns says the stock market may pick up quickly, but the economy's rise may take longer.
Every month that we sit kind of stagnant is getting worse and worse because so much pressure is put on it by the massive level of unemployment we've seen. So expect the market to possibly rebound relatively quickly comparatively, whereas the economy could take a lot of time to relieve that pressure of so many people being out of work and so many businesses going under.
Burns says the country is divided on whether to reopen the economy. He says some workers are comfortable keeping safe while working from home, but others are protesting against the extended lockdowns. Kevin Hogan, NTD News, New York.
A group of small business owners visited the White House today. They talked about the pressures they've faced in recent weeks and about how the Paycheck Protection Program has saved their businesses in these uncertain times.
A number of American business owners shared stories about having to furlough or lay off employees, and with their loan, being able to rehire many of them. Like one coffee shop owner, whose business is based around empowering people with disabilities with gainful employment.
And for most of them, it's their first paying job, which made the decision for us to temporarily close all 5 of our shops especially difficult.
She says the Paycheck Protection Program allowed her to rehire all 120 employees. One employee later expressed his gratitude and his hopes for the nation.
At B&Bo's, we like to use the phrase called not broken. That means me and all my amazing coworkers are not broken, and we have lots to offer. I know the great country of the United States isn't broken either.
The president said we'll see more effects from the program in the coming weeks, adding that the Small Business Administration processed more loans in 14 days than in 14 years. The first round of funding, $340 billion, helping over 1.6 billion small businesses.
So that American workers can retain their jobs, receive their paychecks, and help our economy take off quickly once America reopens for business, which is happening right now as we sit.
And he says at least $60 billion is reserved for community programs, serving minority and distressed communities. Addressing states' requests for extra funding, Trump said there will need to be more discussion.
The problem with the states is we're not looking to recover 25 years of bad management and to give them the money that they lost. That's unfair to other states.
Pointing to the issue of sanctuary cities, but said they can talk about funding if it's related to the virus. Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
New York is the first state to cancel a presidential primary due to the CCP virus. The Board of Elections deems the primary too risky.
New York officials canceled the state's Democratic presidential primary in an attempt to curb the spread of the CCP virus. Governor Andrew Cuomo said it was a tough decision for the state Board of Elections, but a one that he would not second guess.
I'm not going to second guess the Board of Elections. There are I know there are a lot of election employees of boards of elections who are nervous about conducting elections, but I'll leave it up to the Board of Elections.
Governor Cuomo already delayed the primary from its original April 28th date to June 23rd. The primary fell in significance as safety and social distancing took over. And since Senator Bernie Sanders dropped out of the race, frontrunner Joe Biden no longer has any real opponent. The Board of Elections Democratic co-chairman, Douglas Kellner, said holding the primary would be frivolous. Another member of the board told the New York Times the board decided to cancel to minimize the risk of spreading the virus. Sanders' campaign condemned the decision, saying the Sanders campaign was suspended, not ended. Sanders' advisor reminded the Board of Elections the primary process not only leads to a nominee, but also to the selection of delegates. He said people in every state should have the right to vote for their preference.
Walgreens is expanding its drive-through virus testing. Yesterday's announcement follows a similar statement from CVS. Walgreens says it will provide the tests in 49 states plus Puerto Rico. It says it's working with government and health leaders to focus on underserved communities. The goal is to test 50,000 people a day. CVS says it will offer drive-through testing at up to 1,000 locations soon. It hopes to test 1.5 million people a month. And if the UK's death numbers keep rising the way they are now, they may soon surpass all of their neighboring countries.
Britain is on track to record one of the worst virus death toll in Europe. The Office of National Statistics says that UK topped 24,000 deaths 9 days ago. Unlike government numbers, their figures include death in community settings, like care homes where overall facilities have tripled within a few weeks. The UN World Food Programme is reporting the first disruptions in some food supply chains. Similarly, the WHO appealed for more flight capacity to step up shipments of test and protective equipment. Both issues have surfaced amid greatly reduced international air transportation. Russian President Vladimir Putin is extending the country's non-working period until May 11th. Restrictions were due to be lifted at the end of April, but Putin says the peak of Russia's infections have not yet been reached. The Argentine government extended its ban on all commercial flights. That includes air travel to, from, and even within the country. The ban will remain in place until September. And French Prime Minister is looking to ease lockdown restrictions. He said prevention measures have saved thousands of lives, but now it's time to stave off economic collapse.
Lockdowns may be in place, but people are not completely barred from going outside. That means there is still a chance to contract the virus. Two professors from Columbia University have some advice on how to keep the virus from coming home with you.
From working at an essential business to running errands, it's virtually impossible for many people to stay at home while under lockdown. But going outside comes with the risk of being contaminated with the coronavirus. Professor Rockaniello says that in order to stay safe, we need to be cautious around surfaces that are being touched regularly and by many people.
I would be particularly careful with car doors, elevator buttons, anything that gets a lot of traffic. Door handles are a big one, and they're either a handle or a lever or the push things that we have in so many buildings.
According to Professor Morris, people tend to overlook personal items when disinfecting, like their phones. He says that it's good to regularly clean your phone since it is used many times throughout the day.
You know, you probably have it in your purse or a pocket where it's not likely to get contaminated, but it is a good idea to keep it clean.
In terms of movement, maintaining social distance is most important.
If you're jogging, you don't really need to wear a mask. You should stay away from people. You know, if you can stay 6 feet away. You know, some countries have banned jogging, which I think is completely not necessary because you're not usually jogging next to someone, right?
Professor Rockignello also stresses that keeping your hands clean is the best defense against the coronavirus when going outside.
A family in Hungary with 10 children explain how they are coping with schools being closed and the country under lockdown.
However your life in lockdown is going, spare a thought for the Jube family from Hungary. They have 10 children at home, with an 11th on the way. Now schools are closed, looking after them has become a full-time job in itself. The father is Hungarian ex-world champion canoeist Martin Jube.
Our life has changed a lot. As the younger ones were in nursery or school before, now everyone is at home. So we have 10 kids here all day, and keeping them occupied is no small task.
Martin and his wife Dora get by with 2 fridges and a freezer and use a 17-seater bus to transport the family around their home city. But the biggest challenge has been homeschooling. 6 of the children, who range in age from 15 years to just 4 months, have been studying at home for weeks. With 6 girls and 4 boys and a 5th boy to be born soon, the couple plans to keep growing the family.
I think we would not stop here. If God gives us more children, then we would like to have 1 or 2 more.
The Jubes say the lockdown has taught their kids to be more self-reliant and helped bring the family closer together.
Here at China in Focus, we dedicate ourselves to bringing you truthful, unbiased reporting. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates and see you tomorrow.